Hi, everyone. Welcome to Forbes Talks. I'm Diane Brady. I am with Maggie McGrath, who is, of course, the editor of Forbes Women and a Swiftie, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Maggie? Did you get your ticket last week?
Oh God, I've resisted that title for so many years. I did not get my ticket, which honestly, I have to say, I don't know if I'm a Swiftie because I didn't even know there was a pre-sale to sign up for. I don't often enter the fray of these giant arena tours and the competition on Ticketmaster. So I knew it was going to be competitive. When she announced the tour on November 1st, I messaged my girlfriends being like, okay, what's our strategy? Should we go to some town where none of us live that has a lower metropolitan population than New York or Philadelphia? But no, I did not spend all of last week refreshing Ticketmaster. So you might say I have some bad blood.
Well, yes. Dum. But I do remember one of our colleagues, I watched, it go round and round. I mean, let's unpack for people what happened. We know that there was, disaster, Ticketmaster. There's all kinds of stuff in the press. Unpack, she decides to go on tour, then what happened?
Okay, so not only did she decide to go on tour, this is her first tour since 2018. Obviously, the pandemic meant that she couldn't tour in 2020, and 2021, so much was up in the air. So there's pent up demand from the pandemic, but she didn't tour in 2019 either. So it's just been building. And in that time, she has, to her own admission, released more music than she had in the prior decade. She released Folklore and Evermore in 2020. At the height of the pandemic, she was just kind of in quarantine, just writing up a storm. And then she's been releasing the re-records of her masters so that she can obtain the IP rights to those songs. So she's re-released or released a ton of new music. And then she announces this tour, and interest and demand gets so high that after announcing the tour on November 1st, she added tour dates. I was looking in my native Philadelphia. They initially started with like 2, and then I saw more dates adding to the schedule. So it looked like trying to accommodate demand. But on Tuesday of last week, the pre-sale tickets opened. And
these are pre-sale tickets for fans, or pre-sale tickets the way, like, if you've got a MasterCard or a Visa, you can do a pre-sale?
So there was the Capital One pre-sale if you have a Capital One card, or there was the Ticketmaster verified fan program, which allegedly is to try to prevent bots from sneaking in and scooping up tickets to then resale at really just jacked up prices. Now, what seems to have happened is there was a mad rush in this presale. 2 million tickets were snapped up in this presale. It's unclear how many overall tickets were available for sale, but basically so many tickets went to customers in the presale, and there was so much demand. Ticketmaster site stalled, and you got the little spinning wheel of death, or it just didn't work, to the point that then the general sale, which was scheduled for Friday, November 18th, was canceled.
Doesn't that, in essence, that seems to happen a fair bit, in terms of all of these issues around the bots and getting, Adele, I remember, had similar issues. What was unique this time? Because I know even we had politicians going to Twitter calling for, death to Ticketmaster, the monopoly. Was it just because Taylor Swift's so popular, or was there some unique kind of glitch here that showed us all just how bad it could be?
It was a perfect storm, I think. I mean, Ticketmaster initially said only 15% of users experience glitches, which that seems like an underestimation based on all the outcry online. But, Erin Spencer-Cyron, one of our senior contributors for Forbes Women, wrote a story about the power of the Swift fandom, of which I may or may not be a part at this point. I don't even know. But Erin, actually, she and her friend tried to get tickets. It took more than 2 days, 5 hours, 30 minutes, and at least 2 email registrations. to finally get those tickets. And in her piece, she kind of points out the power of Taylor Swift's fans, right? We've all been online watching Taylor's growth. She has famously engaged with her fans on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Twitter. She puts Easter eggs, little clues about lyrics in captions and in Instagram stories. So she really knows how to stoke fan base. So then when you take these very online fans and a very online site very publicly fails, you get the outcry that we see. So I think it's the moment and it's the medium, right? Pearl Jam tried to go after Ticketmaster in the 1990s. I don't think Pearl Jam's fans were as organized, or quite frankly, Instagram and Twitter didn't exist in the late 1990s. So we're just in a different moment where fans can be more vocal, and she has a ton of fans. She has 232 million followers on Instagram. Not all of those people get tickets, but all of those people do have social media accounts where they can make their voices heard.
I mean, it seems like, how do you defeat this? Because last I checked, Taylor Swift tickets are going for 20,000 plus. So this whole idea of appealing to your fans, getting, reaching them at their price point, it seems almost like an impossible task at this point. I mean, does any of this blame fall on Taylor to some extent for how they structured the sale in the first place?
So on one hand, it sounds like she asked the right questions, but on the other hand, she knows how popular she is. She knows that she gets money from these tours. Maybe there was a way, I don't know. I've seen some kind of glib tweets about like, we should take the Spotify rankings of who's listened to her the most and give those fans the code, because those are the proven fans. I think that's a little tongue in cheek, because obviously a bot could probably just run her music all day. But this is where my question for her is, did you do everything you could? I have to imagine that someone with her power and influence in the industry, you've seen her speak out on other issues, whether it comes to musicians owning the rights to their music and getting paid for their music, or as she has spoken out more politically in recent years, trying to get out the vote for general elections and midterm elections. She knows the power that she has. So my question to her is, okay, you asked the questions, but were there more questions that you should have asked?
Well, and it's interesting. I like her music. I would not call myself a Swiftie, but what I think has been something I do admire is this. You mentioned her essentially reclaiming her IP, and she won an award, for Red, the Taylor version at the American Music Awards. I mean, is that unusual? I mean, I know a lot of female artists are entrepreneurs, but you rarely see them re-release, albums in essence to stick it to the man.
Or stick it to Scooter Braun, as it may be.
Yeah.
No, it's I can't think of another example of someone doing this, and there are very few artists who could do this. As someone who listens to her music, I can say I hear the way her voice has matured. I actually really enjoy the re-records, because I think her more mature voice adds elements to some of these older songs, but she's also been very smart about releasing songs from the vault. So with each re-release comes 5 to 6 songs that had never been heard before, and which she says had been written during the original time period at which she wrote Red or Fearless, or she hasn't re-released 1989, but I think I'm among folks who are hoping that's the next one, right? So she says that there are basically notes from the cutting room floor that she's turned into new songs, which in turn fuels interest in these re-releases, because you want to hear the old stuff, but you want to hear the previously unpublished stuff. And for years, she has been teasing this 10-minute version of All Too Well. Or maybe not years, but I feel like there have been whispers and rumblings that there was another version. And so when that came out, it's the song that Taylor Swift fans have long said is the most underappreciated. She didn't release it as a single back in the day. This one did come out as a single. So she's been really smart, honestly, with these re-releases. But that in turn has fueled the popularity. And you see that with the American Music Awards. She won multiple awards last night at the AMAs, which are entirely based on fandom. Fans vote. It's based on Billboard charts. So you see the popularity of her fan base, which in turn both explains the Ticketmaster debacle, but also invites a lot of questions about what more could have been done to prevent it.
Is there anything else with regard to just where she sits? And there are a number of artists who've had longevity. Beyonce, Madonna, arguably. But I think there feels like there's a bit of a political bent, almost a feminist bent to this Taylor Swift fan. And maybe I'm over, exaggerating that. But do you see that in terms of even the way she communicates with her fans and the issues that they rally around with her?
I think it's been an evolution. And she talked in the Netflix documentary, I might get the name wrong, like Miss Americana. I think they took it was a spin on a title of a Taylor Swift song, and it came out a few years ago. And you saw her kind of grappling with how much to speak out politically at the time. And so like anyone else, she's been growing up. She was born in 1989. She turns 33 in a few weeks from this recording. So like anyone else, I think she's always had the singing voice, but she's been developing her political voice, her voice as a role model and as a political figure. So, I mean, we could do a whole PhD thesis on the feminism of Taylor Swift, but I do think it's fair to say that over the last few years, we've especially seen her being more willing to use her voice for perhaps feminist causes.
In retrospect, is there anything you could have done to get those tickets, Maggie, or would have done?
I was actually going to text my friends the night before the general sale to be like, okay, guys, what should we do? I think I was just so focused on some other news stories. Obviously, there were the midterm elections and the Sam Bankman-Fried blow up that I think I was probably paying a little more attention to, that I would probably go back in time and just like read the fine print more, because it's total rookie mistake. Did not sign up for the pre-sale. I should have known to do that.
Well, let's hope it's not another 4 years. Thanks very much, Maggie.
Thanks, Diane.